All right. Well, welcome everyone to another High Tech Live. Bienvenidos. If you are new to High Tech, welcome. I'm Viviana Costa. I'm the Executive Director of High Tech. This is always such an amazing opportunity to bring our community together. And if this is your first High Tech Live, we do these every other week. It's a series where we bring together our Hispanic tech community to connect, share, and learn something new. So these are informal conversations where we get to hear from our partners like Google, our community members on topics that touch on tech, leadership, D&I, and everything in between. As you may or may not know, we always do a little bit networking after our session. So if you have time to stick around and chat, please feel free to do so. I believe we have some Googlers that are going to be sticking around as well. So today, we are going to be talking about the ins and outs of product management. And our speakers are going to share their insight on the role of product management, their career journeys, and how culture influences the work and how community plays a part of that work. So I'm really thrilled to welcome Google and YouTube product leaders Lilian Rincon, Senior Director for Consumer Shopping, and Pablo Paniagua, I hope I didn't butcher that, Senior Director of Product Management for YouTube Search. So prior to her role in shopping, Lillian led experiences for the Google Assistant, Skype, and Microsoft Ads. Born in Venezuela and having lived in Canada, Indonesia, and the US, she has a diverse global perspective, how she shapes her team designs and creates for the world. So beyond that, beyond her work, she also has her young kids and a puppy in California. You're gonna have to tell us about that puppy as well. We have some dog lovers on in this crowd. And then a little bit about Pablo. Having led growth for 3 years in YouTube, Pablo currently leads product management for YouTube Search, knowledge and image teams. Prior to that, he held significant leadership roles at Storm 8, Splash, and Zynga. And then prior to Zynga, he founded a tech marketing startup with notable customers, Yahoo, Ask.com, and Zynga. And he's also into electronic bossa nova. So also want to know a little bit about that, Pablo. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Pablo and Lillian to our High Tech Live today. Feel free to ask questions throughout. We'll also have some Q&A at the end. But thank you, Lillian and Pablo. I pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the awesome introduction. And apologies for that. I don't know how many of you guys noticed, but I could not get into the Zoom call. Just like a great example of the last 2 years and all the tech challenges that we've had. So yeah, so Pablo and I are here. I want to keep this very casual. So if you guys have questions, like please feel free to like just unmute and ask us questions. We have some stuff prepared, but we're here really honestly to help hopefully share some insights that will help you. I was going to start. It's funny, actually, Vivian, I didn't mention this to you, but in preparing for this, actually, I realized I didn't really know where Pablo was from. I totally got it wrong because I knew he spoke Brazilian Portuguese. And so I just assumed he was from Brazil. So, but he'll tell you where he's from. There'll be a big surprise in a minute. So yeah, so as Vivian mentioned, I have 2 kids, a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old. I'm, nací en Venezuela, entonces mi primer idioma es español, por supuesto, pero hablo como una niña de 9 años porque pues me fui de Venezuela cuando tenía 9 años. So, I speak like a little girl, but I do still think sometimes in Spanish. I left Venezuela in, the late 80s when there was a military coup, believe it or not, when the White House in Venezuela, it was like a state of emergency. It's just crazy. I can tell you that story another day. But moved to Vancouver, where I really struggled learning English. So I don't know how many of you guys learned English at a later age, but even for me, being in an English as a second language class, needing to learn English was something that I think very much stuck in my memory as like one of the first really challenging experiences that I had. And I'm an only child, which is the reason I had 2 children and a dog. So like now we are a big family. But at the time, honestly, I was very lonely, but in some ways it really helped me with my journey because it taught me that, when I was really depressed and sad, that if I really put my mind to something, I could figure it out. And you may or may not know this, but I learned English not in my ESL class, because my ESL class was full of people from Hong Kong at the time in Vancouver. No one spoke Spanish, believe it or not. Nobody in Vancouver that I knew spoke Spanish except for my parents. It was terrible. So happy to be in California now, but I learned English actually with cassettes. You guys remember cassettes, okay? And Madonna lyrics and Debbie Gibson. Debbie Gibson, yeah. and translating lyrics from the cassette. Remember how the cassette would have the lyrics in the yes. So yes, and a dictionary. And this is how I literally taught myself English, was learning through lyrics, Madonna lyrics, like a prayer, you know, like it was crazy. But anyway, sorry, long story. I moved around a lot. Moved to, my parents, like many of us, were immigrants to Canada, and they struggled. They were both engineers, but they struggled, honestly, figuring out their footing. And so we moved a lot. We moved to Vancouver, from Vancouver to Indonesia, where my mom is from, to try to create a life there. Also, they struggled. So we moved again to Venezuela, believe it or not. I was there for like 3 months. Then the situation was getting worse and worse. So then my dad and mom kind of split up, and then I moved to Canada again. So in a period of 3 years, it was crazy time. I did end up learning English. And the one universal language was math, because math, it doesn't matter what language you speak, it's math. And so honestly, that was the birth to computing science and to product management. Anyways, that was really long. I'm sorry. I just kind of wanted to tell you a little bit.
No, I love that. And thank you for sharing that, because I feel like that resonates with probably so many people more than you know. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Okay, and then now I'm going to hand it off to Pablo, because like I said, I felt like such an idiot yesterday. I was like, you can tell your story from Brazil. And he's like, I'm not from Brazil. So Pablo, please tell us where you're from.
Thanks, Lillian. Yeah, we've been working together for a couple of years, but yeah, so these things happen. I was born and raised in Spain, right? So I grew up there, and my first language también fue el español. But I speak Portuguese actually because I have Vivian already mentioned a little bit of my musical side. I love music, and I love Brazilian music, and just like you with Madonna and Debbie Gibson, I started to sing in Portuguese, and you kind of understand it a little, right? If you speak Spanish, right? But after some time, like, well, there's a bunch of stuff I'm singing, I have no idea where it is. And I just started to learn, right? And when I was in Spain learning Brazilian Portuguese, taking into account that, our neighboring country, Portugal, it was not the easiest, but, I was able to find a couple of teachers and stuff like that that would help me, and then mostly through music as well. And I live in the Bay Area in California, and I have 2 kids. 2 girls, 10 and 12. I don't have a dog. I have 2 cats that, by the way, I closed the door, but they may show up because throughout the pandemic, they have showed up to meetings, even though I try to keep them out, but somehow they make it in. And a lot of what you shared resonated as well, Lillian. I wasn't that good at math, but I always appreciated, technology. And as a kid growing up, I was trying to, program in BASIC and, do little games and stuff like that. And definitely that was critical for my career, even though I didn't study formal computer science, right? But yeah, that's probably how I got started in technology in general. And I moved to the Bay Area in 2007 or so, and I lived in LA before that. Yeah, but if some folks want to share where they are connecting from, or some of their backgrounds, or if anything of this is resonates with them, some of these stories, it would be, feel free to jump in. It would be great to hear from you.
I'll go first because I gotta go to a graduation quickly soon. Alejandra, soy de Argentina. Vine en el año 2000. I came here to actually help build Ask Jeeves in Espanol. Remember Ask Jeeves?
Yeah, cool.
That would serve you search results. Have lived here since. I am now in LA, Culver City. I I am now head up the product portfolio for Fandango, Voodoo, and Rotten Tomatoes, part of NBC Universal. And I've been a partner of Google, and I have met you, Lilian, at a couple assistant top partner advisor sessions.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. Hola, Pablo. I knew you were from Spain after you said 2 words. I have.
We
So
have a
the
question
period
in the
was-
chat. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I just saw the question. Yeah, Bay Area. I'm sorry. This is like just us speaking usual speak. The Bay Area means like San Francisco, San Jose, around there. Sorry, that's very Silicon Valley speak. It's like, it's annoying. I know. I'm sorry. Feel free to call us out anytime we do that.
Thanks, Lillian.
Okay, so yeah, it looks like we've got folks from everywhere. That's so great. So yeah, please continue chiming in if you want. But maybe in the meantime, and maybe I'll move on. So one of the other things that I think we wanted to talk about was our values and kind of how we lead. And I think, you know, I don't have a big long spiel about this. I'll be honest with you, every couple of years, I think about, because I think also our values shift as we grow older, as we become more mature. And as we become even, you know, more senior leaders, this becomes more of an important thing for you really to think about. For me, I will say that I wanted to show you guys, it's literally a real thing. I have a sticky note and I have random things here that but anyways, I have a sticky note that you can see here that I have right beside my desk. And it says inclusive, collaborative, innovative, trust, empathetic, and biased action. So in 2022, every year I do this, by the way, this is a secret. Like I mean, I could do something nicer than a sticky note, but this year I chose a sticky note. It's right by my desk. And I look at it honestly from time to time as something that I want to emulate in the way that I lead. I don't know if my team, I know Regina, you were asking, I don't know what my team says about me. They might be saying I'm completely the opposite of these things, but intentionally, at least I do this so that I remind myself of the types of values that I want to lead with. Anyways, that's a little bit about me. Pablo, what have you found, has shaped you, and what values do you think about?
Sure. Thanks, Lillian. I think there's several, but to me the most foundational thing is being honest and candid. And I think it saves so much time. It's incredible, right? And you see people, trying to sugarcoat things, and at the end, it's it hurts everybody, right? When things are not clear, right? And I think the more you do that, the easier it is, and the easier it is to do things with. Because being candid doesn't mean to be harsh, right? Like, you're just clear and direct, but you can be kind, right, as well, right? So I think it is, being very, very clear, candid, and honest. And frankly, I really think this last couple of years during the pandemic, it was absolutely necessary, right? Because, when you're face-to-face, I think you can get a few other signals, right? When you're on Zoom, what you hear is what you understand, right? And being very, very clear and direct with folks has been, I think, very, very important. Yeah, absolutely.
You
and
definitely come across as very sincere, Pablo. I can say
thank
that.
you. Thanks. So maybe we can, do you want to jump to, we can talk product, or we can say how we finished doing product management. Lillian, what do you want to chat about?
Yeah, whatever you'd like. Yeah, why don't we say a little bit more about, because I think we said a little bit about our journeys, but do you want to talk a little bit about how you landed in product management? Since I'm sure, because this is one thing, by the way, y'all, that we think a lot about at Google, actually, especially in recent years. We've been, you may have heard weird memes in the past about, like, we only accept computing science grads to be product managers at Google. Like, that's definitely not the case. We definitely know that some of our most successful product managers actually didn't even study a technical degree. And so, like, that's definitely a meme that we want to be clear about. I'm definitely not a good example because I did study computing science. I was an engineer and somehow landed in product management. But Pablo, I would love for people to hear your story because I think it could really inspire others to see how, you know, an interesting journey of getting to PM.
Sure. So for me, it was not that that obvious. I don't think product management is that well known as a career, right? Like, you know, it's not like you're a kid and you know, you hear, you know, one says I want to be an astronaut, you know, whatever, and the other says, oh, product manager, right? Probably it takes a while to hear that.
By the way, before we go on, what did you want to be as a kid?
As a kid, I wanted to be a banker. Yeah.
Really? Oh, yeah. I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, I went to a bank once as a kid. You know, they made me open a bank account. I gave my money to the teller, and I assumed the teller just kept it, right? And I'm like, I want to be that guy, you know. And so that was it. Yeah, you know, a kid, gotta love it. So, but you know, I matured a little bit after that, and you know, I worked in marketing before. I was passionate about technology. I really liked it, and I was trying to, you know, I did a little startup to sell Web 2.0, right? Actually, as Jeeves was one of my customers, so you know, I do remember very well. But when I got, you know, like the memos or the description of the products, I was like, well, this is nice, but it would be a little bit nicer if when you clicked here, it did blah, you know, or stuff like that. And I would even pass the feedback, and they were like, nice of you to share the feedback, but you know, that's not your job, right? And I'm like, whose job is this, right? And little by little, I discovered the role of product management. I tried to get, you know, closer to it, but I have, you know, my education is in business, right? So, you know, I coded for fun on the side, right? But nothing useful, but that's how I went about it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, even though, because I also, yeah, like you said, like when we went to school, maybe they have product management. I think they do, actually. I know somebody who's teaching product management in college now, but at least we're so old, right? That back then they didn't have product management courses. So I studied anyways, computing science. I was an engineer for some time. And the way I landed in product management, honestly, was that I realized that I like to understand the product strategy, even because before, actually, even in the first company I was in, there was no PMs, right? And you just had TLs who had to do this work. And so anyways, that was my journey to discovering product management. And I love it, you guys. It's one of the most fulfilling jobs, I think, that I've ever had.
Very cool. And Lillian, jumping now to where we are in product, one thing that I think we keep coming back to at Google is being user-centric, right? It's one of our top values. So, you know, when you think of your current role for, you know, in Google Shopping, how do you think about how you're helping our, you know, our users, and how do you build trust in your service?
Yeah, you know, so I will say that, you know, I've only been in this role, you guys, for about 8 months. So before that, for the previous 4.5 years, I was on the assistant. So there's kind of two parts to this. I think on the assistant, I really wanted to think about how do we create functionality that didn't exist in many ways, because assistant and voice and all of this stuff was relatively new, that could help people in their real lives. And a lot of this came from UXR and from, sorry, I keep using acronyms, from like user research and, you know, feedback that we were hearing from users. And it led, and some of it actually was instinct. So that's the other thing I want to share. Like, you know, Pablo and I were chatting about this yesterday, like product management. Yes, a lot of it is data driven. But then a lot of it also is just your own product instinct and your own personal, you know, background, let's say, and uniqueness that you bring to the role. And going back to, you know, Venezuela and, you know, I mentioned ESL, how much I struggled with language. I think for me, helping people with that challenge of learning a language, I think, is something that I've always kept close to my heart. even if it wasn't necessarily the thing that the data showed. So when I was at Skype, for example, we worked on something called Skype Translator that would help you do real-time translation on a video call with closed captioning. And at the time, it was like unheard of, and it was definitely not something that the data said you're going to have 1 billion users who are going to want this, but actually could really help the few people that really needed this. It could help. And then on Assistant, same thing. We worked on something called Assistant Interpreter Mode, which lets you essentially have the device actually do, translation. So anyways, that's a little bit about in Assistant. And I wanted to share a little bit about how what we do as PMs isn't just data, it's also like what you bring to it. In shopping, I think, again, like I'm coming in and I'm realizing, I don't know how many of you guys shop on Google. If you don't, please start your shopping journeys at Google. But we're really trying to shift search for the first, well, not for the first time, but in a big way, I will say, to bring the things that people need to make the best shopping decisions. And to the question you had, Pablo, about trust, I think one great thing about Google is that, we're not a retailer, and we're really trying to have the power of, all the comprehensive information that we know on the internet and bring that information to users as they shop. And so, I hear a lot of, I don't know how many of you guys are Gen Zers, but yeah, Google Lens is great. Yes, I completely agree. You can shop with your eyes. If you haven't done that, take a picture and Google Lens will show you products. I've done that actually a lot when I run into people who I like their outfits. I'm like, can I take a picture of your outfit so I can find it? So yes, great feature.
That's so dangerous. Just
it is super dangerous, but it's so useful. It's because you don't even have to ask me.
Now I'm gonna have to try it.
Anyway, sorry, that's a long-winded answer, but yeah, we're doing a lot to try to bring in innovative, but also useful things that hopefully will inspire users to start their shopping journeys on Google. What about you, Pablo? That was a lot. I'm talking too much. I think I had too much coffee this morning.
No, I think it's great. Thank you, Lilian. I'm also learning, so I really appreciate it. So I think that for a lot of products, sometimes you have like some key metrics and you're iterating, and and it's easy because you clearly have a top line metric and you're trying to move revenue or whatnot, and you kind of know what to do. But I do think that in a lot of the products that we are working on, they may be already quite optimized and they work fine, right? So it's trying to understand what users are trying to do next. And in the past, when I was, for example, working in gaming, like you would come up with an idea, you thought it was a cool game, and try to get people to play your game, right? And the mindset was, you have something that you think is good, you try to find people and put them in your game and optimize the user journey, right? Trying to do that. But now that I'm at YouTube in search in particular, we are trying to understand what people are trying to do with our search engine, and try to do a better job trying to serve specifically those users, right? And for me, the key change was when I started to see the research coming back from India in particular. Top market for YouTube, a lot of users, and they started using YouTube in general, YouTube search in particular, for information needs, right? I think that most folks, if you ask them, what they think YouTube is, it may be more about entertainment, right? Like the stereotypical, you look for cute cat videos, or music, gaming streams, or stuff like that. But then, the queries, the questions we're getting from users in India were, how long do I let my soybeans to dry? And I'm like, okay, like, this is not like Lady Gaga but romance, right? It's way more complex, right? Or health related, right? Or even like local queries, like best gym in Bangalore or whatever, right? And it was a situation where we actually started to build a product that we should have guessed already somehow, right? That users would need, right? But nobody could anticipate that, right? So we are really looking at how people are using the product and try to serve that, right? Which is different from the way I was thinking before, right? So we are really trying to get ahead, but users they keep surprising us with different ways of how they use it, right? So it's trying to listen to what they do and try to react as quickly as possible.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
I love, by the way, I don't know what you guys use YouTube for. That'd be another fun thing to get from folks. I use YouTube because, believe it or not, I didn't use makeup until I was like 27, and I'm old now. Now I use a lot of makeup, but I don't know how to put it on. So that's how I use YouTube. I follow like makeup artists and I figure out, oh, that's how you're supposed to put eyeshadow. Okay, great. So yeah, that's my journey through YouTube. Hey, so maybe switching topics, I want to talk a little bit about community and how it's helped us. Stepping back, you guys are going to learn probably way too much about our lives, but when I was in high school, I was part of I used to play volleyball, you guys. This was one thing that I did. And for me, especially, I mentioned my dad wasn't there for a long time. And then at some point, my mom wasn't there because her mom was sick. And so for me, mi familia in many ways became my volleyball team, getting to college, even figuring out what college to go to. I leaned on my volleyball team and their parents to get through life because whatever, I was going through a lot in high school. And what I realized is like that community has always been a critical part of my career. And when you get to work at some point in a company, it's hard to have that because it isn't a natural thing that you're like, okay, who's going to be my family at work, And so you have to be much more intentional, I think, about, asking for mentorship or asking for sponsorship and figuring out like who are the people who connect with you in a way where that relationship is natural, less like these formal. I think formal mentoral programs are also really great and you should tap into them. But I've also really been, in my mind, at least maybe because of my upbringing, I just have always made a point to be intentional about like who are the people that I'm going to lean into and ask them actually, to be like a mentor or a sponsor. And so I wanted to mention a few people. I think when I was at Microsoft, there's a woman called Chang. She's the VP of artificial intelligence now there, who was a GM at the time. And again, she was not my boss. She was not someone that I knew very well, but just someone that I saw and that I just felt an energy towards. And so I just asked, and then Rebecca Norlander, who's my GM, who's also an amazing woman. She connected me with her. And honestly, I still talk to her. Like she's literally coming to my house at some point in a few months because she just become part of mi familia, even though I don't even work at Microsoft anymore, but she's somebody that when I'm struggling or when I'm, thinking about the next job or, whether I'm going to stay at Skype or go to Google or choose this role or that role, like someone that not through blood, but that who I consider, a mentor or a sponsor, for my life, in some ways. And then at Google, same thing. Like I very early on, I don't know, Pablo, if I've even told you this story, but when I started in Google Assistant, my manager, Gumi, hi Gumi, if you ever see this, but he lived in Iceland and I didn't know this. And so, it was really hard actually to onboard to Google as a director when you don't know, your manager is kind of not there. And so Liz Reed, actually, who's a search VP at Google, became that kind of person for me. And actually, I super appreciate her advice. And even now, like, honestly, when I'm a little lost, like she's the kind of person that I will ask for time with to help me navigate. Anyways, that's a little bit about me. Pablo, what about you? Like, are there people like this that have influenced your life that you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think your recommendation of maybe making these things formal and think about it is good. I didn't do it, so I think I could really have used your feedback and your point earlier. I noticed that when you're going through particularly difficult situations, at work, that's likely when you identify the key people that help you, right? Because it's the kind of folks that help you, take a step back and remind you that, how work fits within your life, right? And how the particular piece of thing you're struggling with fits within your work, right? And when I was at Zynga, there was a particular manager, Steve Parkes, that is now in Microsoft. Actually, his company got recently acquired, and it was again, I was being very, very clear about things I was struggling with, right? And time and time again, he was really helpful to ground me, right? And I think when I joined YouTube, actually my manager was my direct manager was that person, and he was Manuel, right, who's Bronstein, who was also your manager, I think, for a while.
Yeah, I'm talking to Manuel later today, actually. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's great. Venezuelan also. And it was he used to work with me when we were at Zynga, so he knew me a little bit, at a personal level. I'm also an introvert, which doesn't really help a lot of times to try to find people, right? So yeah, absolutely. Like, he understood how I would think about things, and I didn't have to say much for him to really understand where I was coming from and things like that, right? And definitely, I definitely encourage folks to find these people and try to make it, formal or at least explicit, right? And I stopped working with Steve in 2013 or something like that, and we text almost on a weekly basis for sure, right? But for the most random little things, we will reach out, right? So I think it's things that sure will help you in your current role, but will help you throughout your career and life in general. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I think that the key is making time, I think, for this too, for making connection and for spending time with some of these folks. You may not realize you need help, or that these things, that these people will help you later on, but actually, like, I will say, for me, in my career, they've been some of the most important resources in terms of like career, job choices and even personal moves. So big fan of being very intentional about having mentors and sponsors. Cool. What else should we talk about? Maybe we should talk about failure. I feel like we're talking a lot about like good stuff. Let's talk about failure. Because we definitely have all failed, or at least I definitely have. I will mention, there's so many examples, but let me start with one. I think when I was at Skype, before I came to Google, this was 2016, and it was the year that every tech company that year talked about bots. That was the latest, greatest thing. And I was at Microsoft. We were actually working with Lily Chang, who I mentioned. She was working on Tay. I don't know how many of you guys remember Tay, but it was the bot that didn't, anyways, there was lots of issues with Tay. But on the Skype side, I was working on Skype bots. And we were, believe it or not, you could probably find some, maybe don't actually, but you could find some videos on YouTube. We had talked about, messaging bots, but we also even built an API for like avatar bots. And at the time we had been talking to Disney, and we'd been talking to the Minecraft team and a bunch of teams. And in the end, we realized that in many ways, this was ahead of its time, like the demo that we had was, you could do a video, you would go to Skype to do a video call with somebody you loved, and now you can do a video call with an avatar, like a character, anyways, that was hugely failure, not because the demo was fabulous, but the technology and the ecosystem wasn't ready to build these types of things. The scenarios that we had dreamed up of, of like someone wanting to do a video call with like a two-dimensional avatar that would have a conversation with you, like the world wasn't ready for it, and there was no real use case for it. But it did lead to good things. So I did get up on stage with Satya. We talked about Skype bots and Cortana. And actually from that, it led to my joining the Google Assistant team. So for me, even though it was a lot of failure and, you know, that particular thing didn't go anywhere, it led to, you know, joining Google. What about you, Pablo?
I love how you casually introduce failure, you know, as something easy to talk about, you know. So thank you. I have quite a few to choose from. There's one that I still remember that is very painful. I'll share like a small one and then bigger ones. Like the small one was, you know, in a game I was doing when I was at Zynga called Cafe World, where you had like a virtual restaurant that you had to manage. And, you know, I saw a drop off in, you know, in the user journey where users, you know, the number of users that continued in a specific journey, you know, saw a significant drop. And I was like, okay, you know, we may not be doing something well there, you know, even though I did a great job doing this flow, you know, I'm sure it's perfect, but, you know, let's see where it can be better. And we did some user research, and I sat through 2 hours of users. The specific step was about 3 minutes. So I sat through, you know, 2 hours of 3-minute sessions of users over and over, not understanding what to do in a particular step that I personally had designed, right? And it was really hard, right? Because it was simple, right? Like you're talking about a cafe. I don't even remember what it was, but like imagine it was like picking up a plate or whatever, right? And somehow they couldn't figure out how to do it, right? And after I had, you know, spent a lot of time thinking about it, and that was yeah. So I still remember that, right? And you know, that taught me how to think ahead, you know, and get user feedback before, you know, even though some things are obvious to you, they're not obvious to users. And another one that is pretty good, and this I hadn't thought of in a while, but you reminded me when you talked about the ecosystem and having things ready, right? It was for a brief amount of time, I was in a startup where we're trying to understand what doing iPhone apps was. It was right when iPhone launched the ecosystem, right? So we would try to launch small apps consistently and, you know, regularly, small things. And then I remember I went to a presentation from venture capitalists from Kleiner Perkins, right, where they talked about you know, virtual reality and you know, a couple other technologies, right? And I was like, hey, we are small, so we are going to be late to do the killer app. So let's do you know, a platform so that other people that want to work in you know, virtual reality and, you know, other things can use our platform, right? And you know, it has grown, right? But I think we were early by, you know, 15, 20 years or something, but we were stressed out about being late, right? And it was like, you launch it, it's like, nobody can use this, right? And that was it, right? So yeah, timing and understanding the market and the ecosystem is absolutely critical. Yeah, but yes, I have quite a few of those, and yeah, I'm happy to share more if folks are interested, but those really came to mind pretty quickly.
It's funny how we can laugh about these things now, right? But at the time you're like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. This is
Yeah.
Anyways, well, hey, you guys, we're at, like, I think we have 20 minutes left. So I don't know, Vivian, if we want to open it up to questions. I feel like we've been talking a lot at people. I'd love to hear from others on the call.
I have a couple questions, but I want to let folks chime in first, but I can always warm things up. Anyone have any burning questions for Lillian or Pablo? Okay, well then I'm gonna kick things off here. I have a question around a little bit more specific to product management, right? And that career journey. I imagine, and I appreciate you sharing the failures, but at the end of the day, they become successes, right? Because you learn from them. But if there was something that you learned now that you wish you would have learned earlier on in your career in product management, what does that look like? What would that be?
You want to go first, Pablo?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I think that when I joined product management, you know, and I saw other leaders make decisions quickly, right? I assumed that, you know, they had, you know, 200% certainty that their choice was going to be correct, right? Because they would deliver it with, you know, a lot of certainty, right? And with time, I actually understood that in our job, we really are forced to make decisions very quickly. And we really try our best to have as much data, information, you know, user feedback, everything you can to make those decisions. But you need to make the decision even if, you know, you don't have all the information and you're going to get it wrong, right? And to me, it took me a while to realize that, you know, people were also just going with whatever was available to them and not necessarily fully formed, perfect, you know, certain opinions, right? And that is what I wish, you know, I had known, because I was like, how come I only have half the information I need to make this decision? And right, and no, like you just need to, you know, to make the call, because it's worse not making the call, right? Because if not, you know, everything falls. But yeah, I understand now that I need to make the decision, that I have some information. I've seen, you know, similar situations play out in the past, things like that. But at the end of the day, you just don't have all the, you know, all the information, and you're going to be wrong fairly often, right? Because, you know, you're working with technology, it's uncertain, right? And it's not the first thing that, you know, somebody tells you like, hey, welcome to product management. You won't have all the information you will need to make all the decisions, and you're going to get them wrong, right? But, you know, it would be nice if I had heard that before. Yeah. How about you, Lillian?
Yeah, I love that. I think you're absolutely right. It's a combination of, like, being a PM is a little bit of art, you guys, in some ways. It's like Pablo is saying, it's, yes, definitely you want data, but sometimes actually you don't have data. Like when I was on the assistant team, we were dreaming up things, you know, we're building a device in the kitchen and okay, it's going to have a display. What should it do? And we don't have data. So you kind of also just have to combine, you know, your product instinct. I will say that, and kind of like, you know, piling onto this, I realized like later on that actually there is something about the unique value that you as an individual can bring to any project. And that even when you're a junior, like you're a junior PM and like you have leads who are telling you the strategy and the whatever. I'll tell you a story. When I joined Microsoft, this was, you're going to see how old I am. Okay, when I joined in 2005, I was like newly out of school, and Bill Gates was still there, and my job was to work on the display ads platform. And if I were just doing my job, I would have just built this thing for the display ads platform. But instead, I realized that there was some stuff happening in the industry. There was, you know, advertisers that were smaller that couldn't create ads because they didn't have the resources. And so from some of these insights that I myself saw as a very junior PM, I wrote this paper. Bill had this thing called Think Week. I wrote this paper about like, we should create this marketplace that would connect starving artists to smaller to medium businesses. And, you know, we'll make the world a better place. And anyways, he liked it. And out of that, my job changed. All of a sudden I was lead of this thing that I was like, not even my job, but it was just like something that I saw that was just, you know, some insight. And anyways, it seems random, you guys, but I want to share that as an example, because I think too often people come into a role, especially as PMs, and think that it's all laid out for you and like that you just exactly have to do your job. At Google, actually, we have this framework called, and sorry, my devices are going to start talking to you. Sorry. We have this framework called 70-20-10, which you may have heard about, where, and I never even knew you could think of this framework. I realized it once I joined Google, but I love this idea that in any job, like, yes, 70%, like the thing you're hired to do, you should do awesomely. But hey, the 20% can be bets, and then the 10% honestly can be just something that you see that you have a passion around, that, and it may be nothing, it may be something. I'll tell you, most of the time it's nothing, but hey, once out of 10 times, it might be this brilliant thing that propels your career. Anyways, okay. Yeah.
That
so
is
that's it.
awesome. Thank you both. That is great insight. And I think that can translate, across function and across roles, right? So appreciate that. We have a question in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and read it out loud from Alejandra Brizuela. How do you go about tying product KPIs to business goals?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think at Google, and even when I was at Microsoft, the business goals and the KPIs are really a marriage. Okay. Like we talk about OKRs. I don't know if you guys have heard about OKRs, but there's objectives, and then there's key results that will measure essentially whether you meet the objectives. So in many ways, the way I think about business goals and KPIs is that the business goal is the objective, so and the KRs are the KPIs that then are proxies to whether you're meeting that business objective or not. Pablo, anything to add, or any other way you look at it?
That's absolutely right. It's the same, right? So depending on the particular team you are, that marriage, works different ways, right? For me right now, it's all about, engagement, relevance, quality, right? And, what you use is actually as, KPIs, is pretty much translates to business goals very, very easily, right?
Awesome. Other questions, guys? So I have a question around, and this is just going back to was someone asking a question? I heard somebody. No? Okay. I'll go ahead and ask mine then. Question around, you guys talked about your respective careers in product management. Lillian, you were more, you went the tech route, and Pablo, you went kind of the tech route. And so my question is, for someone that's maybe looking to transition into product management, what would you say are like the top 3 strengths or assets a person should have to find success in this type of role?
I mean, I'll suggest a couple of things. I have seen folks transition to product management from a very diverse set of careers, right? And I think in terms of skills, being analytical is incredibly helpful, right? Because at the end of the day, you're offered some kind of very ambiguous objective, a lot of times, right? Or here's a high-level idea, right? And from that to something that users can touch, you need to break it down into very small pieces, right? So I think being analytical is very helpful. But I have seen folks, that transition from a career to product management leverage their strengths, right? And that became a little bit of like their flavor of product management, right? Like, for example, I mentioned analytical, if you come from data science, sure, that, that may likely be your strength. When I was in gaming, in Stormade or Zynga, there's folks that make transition actually from the creative side, right? Like game designers or artists, right? And creativity is incredibly useful. It's, very, very important, right? And you can break down the problem as much as you want and have all the technical skills. If you don't figure out how, to solve it, it's not going to work, right? And that creativity and user sensitivity, right, that a lot of folks have, super helpful, right? Other folks transitioning from more like sales or business development, incredible interpersonal skills, right? So, let's say you figure things out. You're not going to do the work yourself, right? You need to talk to engineers, get their take, convince them, about working on this. You're going to have to work with, UX, like user interaction designers, and maybe even marketing or legal or like whoever, right? And all those personal interactions are, incredibly important and make or break things, right? And folks that have a lot of, experience, in interacting with others and, even negotiating, right? Incredibly important, right? So if I think from my background, I've seen, analytical being a requirement, so to say, but creativity and interpersonal skills also very helpful. But depending on where you come from, this is a job that is such a generalist, kind of role that whatever skills you have are likely going to be super helpful in a PM role. And Lillian, what do you think?
Thanks, Pablo. What about you, Lillian? Anything to add?
Yeah, I would say like those are spot on. I was just writing things out so I wouldn't repeat them. I would say that in addition to analytical and the things that you mentioned, I think being a good negotiator, actually, believe it or not, and it's this combination of like collaborating and negotiating. I think especially at Google and even at Microsoft, when you have to be successful, oftentimes it isn't something that you can control on your own. And so you need to work with others. And actually, even both Pablo and I are now directors. Even as directors, honestly, I feel like more and more, actually, the higher up you go, the more you're leaning on other teams, and other parts to help be successful. And so this idea of both inspiring, collaborating, and sometimes negotiating, I think become really a critical part of the art. And then I will say one other thing. I think being a PM, you're kind of the CEO of your area and the glue. And so when things go well, you shine the light on your team. When things go bad, you catch all of the bad stuff. And so I would say having stamina is the other thing. Like, remember that it's a marathon, not a sprint. I remember when I switched from engineering to PM and I realized, why did I do this? Like, this is a lot more fun, but it's so much more work, and yeah, so anyways, in my mind, I always think like it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like, problems will always be tomorrow, like figuring out how to time box things. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, I see a hand raised. Maria, do you want to go ahead with your question?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much, Lillian and Pablo and Viviana. This is super insightful. And I actually have a question regarding like the future. So like once you reach PM level, like you're a PM, right? What is like in the future in terms of career progression? Like where do you go from that?
That's such a great question, Maria. Maybe I'll start, Pablo, and you can give your thoughts. At Google, actually, we have quite a detailed, I would say, career path. So I think as PMs, we have a ladder that takes junior PMs to senior PMs to managers to directors to VPs. So you have the full gamut, let's say, of being, you could eventually be like a VP of product. We also now have introduced an IC ladder. So IC, sorry, another acronym. We're so bad at acronyms. Individual contributor, right? So you could be an individual junior contributor, more senior director, even senior director IC. And that I think of more as an architect in some ways of PM. But now actually we're, I think you like, I don't know if you've kept up with the news, probably you haven't, but at Google, many of our GMs, general managers, again, another acronym, I'm so sorry, general managers that lead like engineering and PM actually were raised as PMs, even Sundar, who's the CEO, if I know correct, and feel free to correct me, I actually don't know, but I think he was a PM at one point. Yeah, go ahead, Pablo.
You're right, he was a PM.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he actually joined as an APM, an associate PM, and yeah, he had a pretty solid career since then. I think to what Lilian has said, I think general management is, I mean, not just at Google, but in general, is a pretty common path, right, for PMs to take, because at the end of the day, you care about some top line metrics, right, and you have to interact with a diversity of teams, so it's a pretty common path. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Great question, Maria. All right, we may have time for one more really quick one. Any takers?
Yeah, I got one.
All right, let's go, Tito.
is there a requirement for any type of PMP like certification for product management or product marketing within your company?
Not that I'm aware of, but Regina.
Cool. I'm kidding.
Yeah, but no, I think we, like Pablo said, we look at the goodness of the person and the opportunity as they fit into the role. And as I mentioned, we're moving away from having necessarily a technical background. In case I didn't say this, I know we're nearly out of time. We're also looking at supporting remote post the pandemic as like a first-class citizen of roles, at least in my PA, which is, so again, another acronym, product area, commerce. Yes, so if you live anywhere, I think we're trying to make that also an opportunity for folks.
I know we're near time, but hello, my name is Kelly Francis. I'm the director of the High Tech Foundation, working with our young scholars who are interested in pursuing careers in tech. Just wanted to ask one question on what one piece of advice you would give for up and comers, those at college level pursuing degrees, and maybe an area that they could focus in.
I'm happy to give my opinion. Like I said, there's a lot of skills that are very helpful, right? So I think it's about being self-aware and understanding what your strengths are, right? How you can make them work for product management, right? Rather than, Lillian was evidently much better at math than I was, and that worked out for her, but I'm doing okay, without that skill set, right? So I think it's the idea of understanding, what you're very good at and trying to see how you can use that for product management. I think that would be definitely very, very helpful. And that, and just using technology and being curious and trying to, thinking how could this be better all the time, right? And developing that muscle of, thinking how to improve, technology, I think is something very helpful.
I love
Yeah,
it.
plus one, I would say curiosity. And also if you're entering the field, like figure out what you're passionate about, find a job in an area that, you really are excited about. And even if you don't get in the first time, like keep trying, I think you will eventually. It took me a couple of times to get into Microsoft, but yes, and look at now I'm here. So keep going.
I love it. Great advice. Well, we are at time, guys, and I want to be sensitive to people's time. I saw a question in the chat that I'm going to hold on to for the networking if folks are going to be sticking around. So if you want to stay and chit chat a little bit more, please do. But with that, I want to thank the Google team. Pablo, Lillian, thank you so much for such a fantastic conversation and sharing your personal story and your professional story. It means the world. Regina, thank you for your leadership on this. Really, really amazing conversation. So again, if you guys want to keep the conversation, stick around. But if not, we look forward to seeing you at the next High Tech Live. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.